So, welcome to episode 2 of Gold Digging, a new weekly show where I try to unearth some golden nuggets from LinkedIn's leading marketing consultants. It's designed to be bite-sized, so the conversation should be about 10 minutes, but it should be hugely topical. We should ask the tough challenges, and it should be quite a rich conversation. Very lucky today because we're kind of going off on a different tangent. So we had Richard in the first episode around PR, but we're very lucky today. We're going to be talking about sustainability, some of the challenges. We're joined by Illana Adamson, who is a sustainable development thought leader, board advisor, keynote speaker. She's been pushing the needle on credible sustainability for over 30 years now. And obviously anyone that sort of follows me knows that I get a little bit confused by this stuff. So it's a great chance to ask some questions maybe that you guys are thinking. So Illana, welcome. What's got your go?
Well, obviously I'm going to start with greenwashing in sustainability because I think you said this a while ago. We've spoken on Clubhouse in lockdown quite a lot, and you said a while ago that sustainability is really overused as a word, and I think that's absolutely right, but I think it's really misunderstood as well as a word, because I think, first of all, we'll get into greenwashing, but just to start with, sustainability as a word is it means to maintain a position. So we sort of start from that assumption of the word that we use in our everyday use, but actually sustainable development, which we use sustainable as a shortening, is really about those sort of socio-political imbalances globally, and that global supply chain and future generations. And really, when we look at sustainability, the easiest way to look at it is, are my choices, my business actions, are they preventing future generations from having access to what they need in order to thrive and survive?
And a quick question, are we supposed to be as in a rush as you guys are making out? Are we really sort of running out of time?
Yeah, so the IPCC, which is the International Panel for Climate Change, so that's 192 countries, thousands of scientists and experts, their most recent report said we have 8 years to bring about seismic change. So when we look at these lifestyle compromises, what I would say is or business compromises, we lived a generation of excess, really, that no other generation has ever done. And and by the way, just to say, this isn't a telling off we all did this. We were all collective, in this process. We all were compliant, and whether we knew it or not, and at different elements of that story, we knew and continued. And that's the bit that we need to shift.
And what happens in 8 years? Because some of us think the world's going to blow up, or what does it mean?
No, what happens is so it's really difficult when we look at these 1.5 and 2 degrees, like if that's in our normal temperature, and if we're looking at a summer's day, we don't care, that doesn't really make any difference. But in climatic terms, that brings about, well, we're seeing it now. You're seeing the wildfires, you're seeing the hurricanes, you're seeing floods. These are all brought around by this speeding up of climate. And one of the issues when we're talking about this is, that one of the narratives is our climate's always changed. We've had ice ages. We've had, well, first of all, we didn't, survive in those conditions, and it's very unlikely we would. And secondly, that happened over a really long period of time. So we were able to adapt, species were able to adapt because it happened over a short period of time. This is happening so fast that the species aren't being given an opportunity to adapt to it.
Yeah.
So, but the good news is we can change it. We're not where we were 20 years ago when I was having these conversations, and we were really asking ourselves, what do we do? This looks like we're heading into disaster, and there doesn't seem to be a way of stopping it. We now know that green energy is not only relatively easy to achieve. We know it's going to boost the economy. We know it's going to generate a whole new set of jobs and income structures, so we know that that's a good thing to do. We now know the investment community are driving a lot of this change. So investors are looking at their portfolios and looking for what's going to be profitable in the long run, and sustainability is obviously profitable.
But is it scary? Because whenever I see someone put their head above the parapet and attempt to sort of do sustainable things, there's this whole band or army comes out and says it's greenwashing. So what is sustainability? But what actually, I get confused by what greenwashing is in the context of sustainability.
So greenwashing really simply is when an organisation tries to profit from exaggerating or misleading customers or investors. Even we've seen greenwashing in the investment community as well now, on their sustainability or their environmental credentials or social credentials. You can have purpose washing as well.
So how that is, just a quick question. So the company does greenwashing, and they make lots of money from it. Is that actually what a CEO needs to go, hey, actually, look, this idea of talking about sustainability actually made me lots of money. So therefore, actually, sustainability could be something that we should do at a board level because I might make money. So is there a positive side of greenwashing, or is it just because people are misleading?
The problem with greenwashing is it distorts the marketplace. And so the people doing it well don't, the cream doesn't rise to the top because it's a distorted market. So consumers are being misled. So the Competitions and Markets Authority are really interested in the market and the consumer protection. And they brought out a brilliant 56-page guidance on how not to greenwash, basically. It's called the Green Claims Codes. And it was brilliantly done, and it's been heralded. You know, it's something we can actually be very proud of in the UK over the last few years. And it really does talk marketeers a lot of the time through how not to greenwash. The problem with greenwashing when we look at it is, first of all, we need to ask ourselves why. Why is the green agenda important? And the green agenda is important because, you know, the earth or the resources are a pie, and our generation have eaten way more than we should of the pie, and we're not leaving our children, our future generations. And I don't mean in 40 years' time, I mean in 10 years' time, we're going to start feeling the effects of this very, very severely if we're not feeling it already.
What is that? Scarce resources, prices?
Yeah, but it doesn't need to be. So if you think the thing that underpins our whole economy, and the reason we're in this situation is the trade, the things we're trading, the thing that underpins is energy. And the energy is coming from fossil fuels. If we swap that energy out, it's not as simple as just doing fossil fuels, because of course we've got imbalances in, you know, diversity and inclusion, and there's a lot of other things that comes into sustainability. But fundamentally, what we're looking at with net zero, for instance, is the whole of our economy is underpinned by energy. We had our industrial revolution, and we've been going since then and getting stronger and stronger. We've got externalities, and this is the problem for business. Business has been analysing its success without including the environmental costs. And so sustainability, and of course that's just silly, isn't it? But I mean, you don't need to be a scientist to kind of go, well, obviously that's not sustainable if you're not actually accounting for the things that you rely on for business and the economy to function. Then at some point you're going to get caught out, and that's where we're at. So yeah, go on.
Now, on a question on that, because I always think that the problem with sustainability potentially is the spokespeople and the people getting the message out there and the people that you can reflect your own self in. So a great example for me is the Boohoo Khloe Kardashian piece, where I was sitting there from externally going, this is amazing, because if she's got so many followers, so many impressionable followers, that if she starts to talk about it, it's going to make them more interested in it. So I saw this as a wonderful positive, that she was on a journey. She might not be on the journey quite as far as you might like her to be, Boohoo with the fast fashion, but it felt quite authentic to me. But then I got shot down quite heavily to say this is absolutely greenwashing and the worst thing for the planet. So where do you sit on that?
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think she's got a huge audience, and we need to bring this. A lot about sustainability has been quite elitist, and that's been in the language that's been from science and those who know. And we don't, that's pointless. What we really want to be able to do, you know, if we could have a magic wand, is to download all the knowledge that I've been able to gather over the last 17 years. It shouldn't be a snobby thing. We need to, you know, just share the information. And actually it is quite, you know, it's a science, so that it does take time to understand how all these jigsaw pieces fit together. But with the Kardashian, and I too think her audience absolutely need to be brought along on this journey. The problem with how that was executed is it sounded as though they were committing to sustainability, when in actual fact, I suspect, as many businesses are going to recognise over the forthcoming months and years, not adjusting to sustainability is a massive risk for an organisation. Every business, if we imagine sustainability as a timeline or a filter, we've all got to go through that to understand what future business looks like, and then it will just be business again. But at the minute, it just has to change the parameters. And so what happened with Boohoo is they didn't. So every single piece of clothing, more or less, I can't think of anything probably that's not, but is all made from fossil fuels at Boohoo. So everything is plastic based. And even if we just look at our net zero, which is our reduction of carbon, the very production of their clothes is carbon. So to have somebody come in and talk about sustainability, we know in order for Boohoo to be sustainable, they need to change their entire business model. Now, that's not to say that someone like Boohoo, recognising that they will cease to exist if they don't adapt, couldn't be a very good spokesperson for all businesses having to change. But they didn't commit to sustainability at the same time as announcing this partnership. If they had committed to, we've looked at this, we've done a materiality assessment, which is what every business would need to do. These are where our risks are. These are the things that our business is doing that's affecting the environment. These are the things that are going to prevent our business from long-term success. So we're going to look at changing these. Not necessarily overnight, but just to have that transparency and say, okay, we need to change these things.
Do you think, because everyone's sort of on their own little island, do you think that businesses like Boohoo look at themselves and go, I genuinely need to change, or do they sit there and go, we will be successful for the whole length of time that we need shareholder value, so why do we need to change at any kind of rapid pace?
Yeah, so I deal with the luxury industry. My background's luxury marketing. I am one of the counter arguments around should we adapt to sustainability is often, how do you get the single mum with 4 children who is shopping at Iceland to care? And the answer is, it's not up to her to care. We should make it scalable so that she is able to buy sustainably without having to think about it. As in all fashion, it should trickle down from the luxury marketplace, from couture down to high street. So we need to make it an affluent and an aspirational choice. And it is, cashmere over, fossil fuel wool. Of course, you're going to want to have the cashmere. So we should make it start from there and trickle down.
Mm-hmm.
Does somebody like Boohoo look at their model and think we need to change? Well, a lot of that comes with how long you want a company to survive. Mm-hmm. So I interviewed Matthew Kilgraff from Richemont, who's the sustainability CSR director globally for Richemont. And Richemont is Cartier and Baume & Mercier and Dunhill and Chloe and all of these brands.
If you could get him to send some freebies my way, just
yeah. But when I asked him, he is very clear. He represents brands that collectively are 1,000, 2,000 years old. Collectively, and he wants to make sure that those brands exist the same amount of time in the future. So his vantage point or his view is much longer because he's a custodian for these brands and he wants them to continue. If you have a new brand that you're really just kind of reaping the rewards in the now and you're not really thinking about the future, you're probably not going to exist. I mean, Harvard brought a report out recently, and it's a really simple one, and it's a matrix of 4 squares, and it basically says you're either investing in purpose and sustainability or you're a dead company walking. So the writing's on the wall for a number of companies already, and they're just waiting.
So the question on that, because this is the interesting thing. So if we're saying we've got 8 years left before it's irreversible damage, it doesn't mean obviously that we can't continue to slow the problem down. And we're saying that businesses have to change to make sure they exist in the next 20 to 30 years as well. But consumerism isn't wanting, we won't pay more for sustainability. We won't really, I saw a recent study that said in times of recession, something like 42% of people had abandoned their sustainability ethos because they couldn't keep up with the price of it. So it just feels like there's so many challenges, and I honestly think that I'll hopefully get you back on the show again, actually, because there's too much to cover in a short space of time. But what would you just give advice for someone like me, next steps to a business level or personal level? What can we do just to kind of do our bit and not get shot down?
So first off, I would say we need to change the focus on the conversation. You need to imagine, so sustainability is a revolution in the same way as industrial revolution or tech revolution. The sooner you can get into understanding it, you know, it's an inevitable, everything is going to change. That we've already reached that sort of tipping point, kind of. We're just a little bit off it, but we know that it's happening. And that's not coming from government, that's coming from the investment community and consumers largely. And businesses recognizing that this is a risk for me. So not changing is a risk, changing is a huge amount of opportunity on the other side. So I think the narrative needs to not be that we're in trouble if we're not being sustainable. The narrative needs to be, where's my business's opportunity in a sustainable future? Because we want everyone to make a profit from solving the problems of, you know, the Anthropocene, which is this period now that humans have impacted negatively the planet. So where do you start? So businesses need to upskill, they need to learn, and a lot of greenwashing comes from rushing to speak about something that you haven't taken time to understand. I don't think a lot of greenwashing is intentional. I think a lot of the time you fall into it, and too much pressure, given your audience, too much pressure is being put on marketing departments. This is a science. It needs to come, for me, in an organization, it should be FD, Chief Sustainability Officer, influencing every other department. It shouldn't sit in marketing. They absolutely should be talking about it. It should be a selling point for the business, but it should be backed up with good governance and purpose and a structure of how you're going to have a pathway to sustainability. So doing the front end stuff without doing the back end stuff is always going to end in greenwashing.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's where we've landed. So I would get every business, regardless of size, to really just start to understand it. So we're setting up courses online to try and help people understand it. Not that I ever thought I'd be doing that, but that's something we're doing now. And green teams, we really strongly advocate for green teams. So whether you set up, for instance, with 5 other marketeers and you all had a green team that represent all the stakeholders of the brands that you might want to look at, and then you look at collaborating, you share information, you upskill your knowledge. And even if you can only commit to 1 hour a month or 4 hours a week, or, you know, whatever it becomes a full-time job for someone, whatever you can afford the time and money to do, just start doing it, because it's an inevitable. And imagine you were given a computer before anyone else started using it. You're too young to remember when we didn't have computers, but I did, and I had a secretary, and we all had computers on our desk, and we ignored them, and the secretary carried on doing everything for us, and so we didn't get involved in the revolution because we were still old thinking. And that's where we're at. If you had a vision 30 years from now, you'd kick yourself for not getting involved right now. You'd think to yourself, that was such an opportunity, and I was so busy moaning about it that I didn't get in. I could have been one of the front runners for it, and I didn't.
That is a perfect ending. I knew there would be some amazing golden nuggets today. So thank you so much, Illana. It's been a wonderful conversation, and hopefully when I post it, you can put some follow-ups in there, because I think people need to learn a lot more.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.